Welcome to a new Harry's Garage video, and today's car is the Audi RS4. You see here, this is the B7. When this car arrived, it changed the complexion of how we thought about Audi. I was at Geneva Motor Show 2005, which is when the first time we got to see this car. And it was a complete change, mainly because of its engine, and it was a V8 engine, and it had a rev limit of 8,250 RPM, completely unheard of in Audi land up until this point when we saw this car. What we didn't actually know at the time was the R8 was going to use the same engine. And it, as I say, you can't believe how it changed the complexion of Audi when this rocked up. And I got to know some of the directors at Audi during this time, and there was one in particular, Wolfgang Hatz, who was in charge of engine development at Audi. And I just printed off his CV. He was responsible for this engine, but his CV is quite cool. He was at BMW test engineer, engine development for the M3 engine and motorsport during his BMW days. He then moved to Porsche and head of development of Formula One. He did the TAG turbo engine during his time at Porsche. He then went Fiat, which I didn't realise, head of engine development there, and then joined Audi in 2001 and head of engine development. And Audi wanted this push to more towards a sporting ideal. They had the Audi Quattro in the past, but they were sort of slightly losing their sporting edge to cars like the BMW M3. I brought my son Charlie, who's holding the camera at the moment. This is his E46. Some of you spotted it when I did that Aston DBS review a few weeks ago. But BMW had the high ground. They had that motorsport engine, and they wanted something for their Audi cars, and this car started that revolution. Let's go and have a closer look. Now, the B7 RS4 was available in Saloon and Avant. We've got the Avant here because I think it's the cooler of the two. Now, the previous version of RS4 had the V6 in it. This obviously gained the V8, so they had to do something about the weight of it. So they actually made the bonnet and the front wings from aluminium rather than steel. The rest of the car is steel. They also introduced this sort of new look of Audi that we got to know. I mean, it was the TT that first showed it. The other thing they did was increase the size of the wheels, and they went up to 19-inch. And unusually on this example, there are CCM brakes on it, carbon brakes on it, because the braking, they knew they had to do something. They had all this power, quite a lot of weight, and it was the one weak link with the BMW M3, the E46 M3. It was a bit weak on its brakes. Not so on Audi, and CCM brakes on there. Signature of all RS models with these aluminium mirrors, the roof rails, the sort of usability. We'll have a look at the inside when we go outside. But come round the back, very distinctive, the big oval twin pipes that you got, RS4 badging, and just a degree of practicality on it. A proper big boot. You can flick the seats down. There's no spare wheel obviously on this. If you lift that up, there's a battery hiding underneath, because obviously it's fairly nose heavy and they needed to do everything they could about that. There's also no Quattro badging, which you'd expect, because obviously all RS4 were four-wheel drive. Right, let's have a look at the star of the show, the engine. There it is, and just look how far forward it is in the chassis. Obviously, because of the Quattro design, the whole V8 sits in front of the front wheel line, which is pretty mad. And there's some unusual things on this engine. I remember being at that Geneva show, and it's, if you know engines, it's a long stroke engine, which is not how you get revs. Long stroke add torque. It means the travel of the piston up and down the cylinder is more, and therefore you get more leverage on the crank and you get higher torque at lower revs. It is not how you make a high revving engine. You do a short stroke. Wolfgang Hatz, somehow this is an engine of two halves. It has good torque and top end power, and it had a piston speed of an F1 car when he was developing an F1 car. So it's a very high-tech engine. It also introduced FSI, which is this direct injection that Audi had. Rather than injecting into the manifold, it actually injects into the engine. That was new. So it had these super high pressure pumps on it. It changed everything. 420 horsepower they got from this 4.2 litre engine, 100 horsepower per litre, which was the benchmark for sports cars back then, and 80 horsepower more than the old style 4.2 litre engine in the Audi S4 at the time. The other thing they introduced on this car, up until this RS4 arrived, the split of power was 50 front, 50 rear. With this one, they went 40 front, 60 rear. First time they did that with Audi. They've done it with Lamborghini and the Gallardo, but first time in the Audi. Anyway, what this car is all about is the driving, so let's take it outside. Remember that door on Audis had these indents, very strong spring against it. It's so Audi of this period. Just very Audi, very beautifully done, and carbon fibre all the way around. And of the noughties, fitting there for the mobile phone, because there's mobile phone that used to clip into a cradle to make it all goes hands-free. No Bluetooth in these days. I'm going to start the engine, so I turn the key and it doesn't turn any further because this is a car with a starter button. There it is. Yeah, start engine there. Another nice little clip here, and just a cigarette lighter as it flicks round. Manual gearbox on RS4 from the beginning, because with an engine that revs at 8,250, there wasn't actually an automatic gearbox that could cope with such high revs, so it was manual. That was their choice. I mean, automated manuals and things came later. Flat, this sort of sports wheel, I'm not a particular fan of it, because when you get to that sort of holding, suddenly you're holding this aluminium and your hand slips off, so I'm not quite sure if that actually works, but everything else is just beautifully laid out. And these proper sports seats, can't say, I think they were an option in their day, I should know, but I'm pretty sure they were. And they've got those side bolsters that you can squeeze and make yourself fit even better in the seat. At the back, yeah, not a huge amount of room. Centre console with ski hatch. Initially just beautifully laid out. Just a quality feel from the moment you step in this car. Yeah. Vanity mirrors on both sides, damped, or losing a bit of damping on its handrail. Yeah, well, they're still damped. Anyway, enough of nonsense. Let's set off, go find some better roads. It's got a light clutch, which is good. Light steering, and away you go. There's this overlay of V8-ness at woofle at lower revs, and then it gets going, and I'm changing up then just at 5,000 RPM. It's something you have to tell yourself, I've actually got another 3,000 RPM to go, because it produces this torque, this grunt, relatively speaking, for a non-turbo engine, normally aspirated engine. But it just wants to get up on its toes, is the feeling you initially get in this car. Quiet as well, measuring out by a bit of road, 74 decibels, so a very refined sort of car, as you'd expect from Audi of this era. Love it. You only got one cup holder, I was noticing. Yeah, not multiple cup holders in 2005-6. Get cruise control, and I get a sports button on the steering wheel as well, and I do get a 200-mile-an-hour speedo, so the kids will really like that. Also on the readout I see 89 degrees for oil temperature. You get a readout for oil temperature. When I set off, I noticed it was asking me to keep the revs down. These are all amazing things. 2005, just a thinking sort of instrument panel that was telling you real live information, what it felt you should know as a driver. Yeah, you also get this S button on the steering wheel. Initially I thought it was something to do with the cruise control or something, but obviously that's down there. But you press S, I get an S on the dash, light up in green, very hard to see. I get a quicker throttle action, and it squeezes up the bolsters on these sports seats as well. here. Now, so I can taste some revs, I'm going to go to second, so 30 miles an hour, this squirt up the hill, so 3,500 revs. Let's see what happens. 6, up to 8. It really pulls all the way round to 8,000 RPM. I mean, the saloon was quicker because it was lighter, but this is not that slow at all. Let's just try it. Let's see where the limiter comes in, mate. Yeah, there we go. So it actually comes in past the red paint. So 8250 is the rev limiter. 8,000 is where the red paint is on the tacho. And it was 4.8, I think, to 62. But it was 16.6 seconds to 200 kilometers an hour. That's 124. So probably 12, 13 seconds to 100 miles an hour, which was pretty damn good going for an estate car in 2005, and on sale at about 55, 60,000 pounds. Yeah, cars somehow seemed more affordable back then as well. Hush, no wind noise, just beautifully put together is my thoughts on this car right now. And this is a wonderful example. This is a 2006 registered and 19,500 miles. You would pay 35, 40,000 pounds for an example as good as this today. It's lovely having a manual gearbox as well in it. Makes such a difference. Anything that brakes a little bit sharp, I can't quite heel and toe, but yeah, I mean, highly dependable. I'm actually going to take the traction control off. They used to come in more than they do now. They're a bit invasive, and in conditions like this, you really don't need anything. They're more for snow or wet or unknown conditions in my book. But here we are, bumpy bit of road. Quiet suspension, I'm not sensing it's working, there's no knocks and bangs. It's got dynamic body control, so they are adjustable dampers, but I don't have a sport setting as such apart from on the wheel. Must adjust, but yeah, it's wider track, the RS4 as well, but it goes down here beautifully. Through this compression. The engine out the front, actually, just more of a bob on the front than the rear through there. Around here, pretty composed. Feels good. Very dependable. Typical of Audi of this period, just how it feels. I'm afraid you're not getting a huge amount through the wheel. I think, yeah, just moving on to the likes and dislikes, I suppose. Yeah, the initial one, the steering, much as it's, you know, they shouted about it at the time of launch, it's still a bit Audi-esque. I think they just can't help it with that overhanging engine and so much weight at the front. There's very little they can do to help it, really. So there's not a lot of feel. It's direct, but it doesn't match the M3. It's where the M3 scores, and that didn't have the best steering either. Other dislikes, just the sharpness of the brakes. It's good to have really powerful brakes. You know, why am I complaining that the brakes are overly powerful? But they're just, to modulate, they're tricky, and I just find heel and toeing a bit tricky because you have to use very little pressure on the brakes, and therefore it's hard to balance your foot and flip the throttle just between gear changes and things like that. Fortunately, there's plenty of likes. I think number one has to go to that engine. I can't tell you the game changer when this engine in this B7 rocked up with an 8250 RPM rev limit. It was so not Audi. We had a preconceived picture of all Audi cars, and they were good, beautifully made, bit stolid, and just not the handling sort of finesse that was available with other brands. And the engines produced lots of torque and they worked, but they weren't really character engines. That all changed with this engine. suddenly there was this motorsport-esque engine in an Audi, and you just thought, wow, what a different car. Where are Audi heading now? What else could they put this engine in? Little did we know, as I said before, that the R8 was on its way. But it's an engine of two halves as well. You've got enough grunt down below to be entertaining, and then you've got that top end sparkle as well. So I'll go around here, nicely composed, got them just. Now Audis did not do that pre-2005. The likes were just the Audiness of it, the quality item, the fact you just knew you were buying a car that would last really well. It just was a step above a lot of offerings at the time, and the price point wasn't crazy, it was affordable, and it looked so smart. Audi were at top of their game 2005-06. Funny, I mean, we often think about when was peak car. Well, this period was peak for me. It was beautiful how the cars were constructed, and they were real usable cars. So it's the practicality of this car with a proper estate, the Audi quality, the four-wheel drive. That's what I loved about this car. I think that's my conclusion of this car. It was just this terrific Audi, dependable, practical quality that made it very special. But the engine just changed our opinions of Audi forever. I think actually dynamically the M3 was the pick. Rear drive, a more motorsporty engine, and more vocal as well. I have one criticism of this RS4 I haven't mentioned. It's a bit quiet. Has a lovely woofle, V8 woofle at lower revs, but until you wake up and you have to tell yourself to use more than 6,000, don't change up at 6,000, change up at 8, and then it really comes alive. And it was a car that in Avant form, I think it's the fact you've got it in estate form, that's what made this car particularly special. Because you could say to you, well, oh, we'll just buy that Audi estate over there. And for all intents and purposes, it fitted child seats in the back, it could do the runs down to Devon, and it could cruise around. You would never know. But taste that high rev ferocity that this car offered in this practical estate, and yeah, it's cool. It's like having your cake and eating it. So there you go, lovely to revisit the B7 RS4. Could say it's a legend in its own lifetime. It sort of was for Audi, but I hope you enjoy this video and gives you a better idea of what Audi was like in 2005-06. And if you have enjoyed this video, keep watching, keep subscribing. More videos coming along very soon.